Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 18 Beta 1 has been out for a few days, and there's even more features to talk about since the iOS 18 Beta 1 is out. What's new video. I also wanted to talk about the overall experience since I've been using it full-time on my iPhone 15 Pro Max and iPad Pro, and we'll talk about your experience based off the YouTube community poll, where at the time of this video there's over 30,000 votes and 532 comments. I've gone through all of the comments to determine what the overall experience is like for many of us. But first, let's talk about some news, then we'll talk about iOS 18 features and take a look at the experience and some of your comments a little bit later. Good news if you're in Japan, sideloading is coming soon, where Apple is now required by law, with a recently passed law in Japan that allows third-party app stores on the iPhone. However, Apple has until the end of 2025 to implement this, so hopefully they implement it faster, sooner than later, and it's arriving soon. They could just turn this on, hopefully, since it's already available in the EU. Apple also announced how many devices this week were running iOS 17. They do this typically every year, and as we scroll down, you can see more and more information about this, but basically 77% of all iPhones supporting iOS 17 were actually running some version of iOS 17. However, if they were released in the past 4 years, those iPhones are running it 86% of the time. Now, it doesn't say what version. It could be the first version of iOS 17, but at least some of them are updated. So if you wanted to see more about this, I'll link it in the description below, and you can see it here where 86% of all devices were running iOS 17 in the past 4 years. Now, as far as other things mentioned, there's a new generation of CarPlay that Apple showed off this week, where they showed it in some of their WWDC sessions. So let me show you what that looks like. Mac Rumors actually posted the story, and they showed some screenshots from the overall coding session. You'll see here, this would be an example of maybe a Ford Mach-E, a Tesla, what it could look like, and some others, maybe a Porsche Taycan or something else. So that's something that could be updated. However, the manufacturer actually has to implement it, but it gives us a look into sort of what the vehicle controls could look like in the future. Now, as far as new features, there are some more new features. I went over those yesterday, over 40 new ones, and there's even more to talk about today. If we go into the weather, and then we go into the view that shows many different areas that we have set here, you can see it says home. This can also show your work location, but you have to enable this if you haven't already. Sometimes it's turned on by default. But if we go into our settings, scroll down to where it says apps, scroll all the way to where it says weather, and go into weather, we have a new option here where it says show home and work labels. So if you have that enabled, it will actually show you based on where you're located and what your actual weather is like in those locations. If we swipe over to my second page, you'll see I have the new passwords app. There's actually a new option here that will automatically update passkeys. It's set by default, but it's something that's new. So if we go back to our options here, and then we go into our apps, and then we go to passkeys or passwords, you'll see here under passwords, if we scroll down to the bottom, it says allow automatic passkey upgrades. Allow websites and apps to automatically upgrade existing accounts to use passkeys where available. Passwords saved for upgraded accounts will not be affected. This is a great move to push everyone to passkeys, where you no longer have to remember a password and it's bio-authenticated. It's much harder to break through that encryption, and it's much better to have you using passkeys. So it's great to have that automatic. Of course, if you want to, you can shut that off. Now, while we wait for the updated Siri and Apple Intelligence, you can actually see the new Siri icon at least in one place so far. If we go into our settings, and then we go to accessibility, and within accessibility, if we go down to where it says control nearby devices, within this, if we control a nearby device, maybe the iPhone 15 Pro Max, you'll see we have the new Siri icon here. If we tap on it, press and hold, we can get that to open up on the other device if we want to use those different options, but this is the new Siri icon. It hasn't been implemented across the device yet, but at least we can see it here. You also have the option to control Siri with a different name this time around. That has to do, again, with accessibility and the vocal shortcuts. So if we scroll down here and have vocal shortcuts enabled, we can set up a vocal shortcut to specifically trigger Siri with a different name. So if we go into this, we'll tap continue, and we'll go down here where it says Siri request, and then we can name whatever we want, maybe computer. We'll name it computer, tap go, and then we have to set up the custom phrase name. We'll just name it computer, and that's it. Tap go, computer, computer, computer. Now we've set it up 3 times, the action is ready, and we'll tap continue. So now if I say computer, there it goes. It actually opened up Apple in my contacts, but either way, it does trigger it. Maybe it needs some work, but either way, we can set something else as far as the trigger to open up Siri. We've already seen the new calculator app and what it can do with math and different equations throughout the OS. However, the equations seem to work everywhere within the OS. Now, one thing I wanted to show you here is maybe we have 930 times 64 equals, then it gives us that, and it continues to show our equation. It no longer deletes it. So if we continue to show that, it shows it up here, what we're dividing by, and then keeps it in our history here as well. So we have all of our equations that we've run, and we can see what it looks like. So that's something that's a little bit new. And then also if we go into maybe messages, within messages, if we go to the calculator and maybe do 4 divided by 2, and then we do the equal sign here, it actually calculates it right in the keyboard itself. So you can do equations pretty much anywhere throughout iOS using the keyboard now. So that's something that's a little bit different that we didn't have before. Photos has an update I missed in the earlier video. I talked about new things. So if we go into Photos, and then we go out of this, if I scroll down within Photos under Utilities, within Utilities, I have the option to actually look up QR codes. That's something we can see now. So any QR code you might have in your photo library, we can quickly go to and scan. Maybe we did a screenshot of it and we just want to jump right back into it. So we can do that now. Additionally, if we're editing maybe today's wallpaper, of course, I'll link that in the description. If we go in here, maybe change the brilliance a little bit, then go to the next thing here, maybe change the contrast, and then we go to actually copy these edits. We have some new options for adjustments and adaptive. I talked about adaptive earlier, but if you enable adjustments, we can select between those things. So if we copy and then maybe we go back and cancel, we'll go back, discard changes, and then we go over here, same thing, it's just downloaded twice, and then maybe we go back in, go to the options here and paste the edits. They'll of course paste. So we have those options. We can select between different things that we've adjusted. So maybe we've cropped the photo, maybe we've changed the saturation or added different filters. All of that will copy and paste just like before, but with more options. Something sort of minor here is if we edit the home screen and maybe we swipe back and forth using this bar below, there's actually a new animation for it. So depending on how many pages you have, this actually slides back and forth a little bit differently. Not a huge change, but something I thought I'd note. If we slide over and go into the Home app, within the Home app, if we go to our options in the upper right, then go to Home Settings, and we scroll down to where it says Home Hubs and Bridges, we can now specifically set a device to be a hub. Now, you have to have HomePod OS 18, which is available to Apple Seed developers, so that's something that you may not have access to. I currently don't have it on any of my HomePods as well, so you will need that. Something else that they've brought back to HomePods is the option to SharePlay to them. This is something we saw in iOS 17.4, and we can now actually do that directly from our device, SharePlay to those. So let's see if we can use that now. And within Music, I have the option to SharePlay, but it's not allowing me to SharePlay to a HomePod just yet, maybe because I don't have an updated HomePod. Apple added a new feature called Messages via Satellite. This is available on iPhone 14 and newer since it has that technology built in and allows you to send messages when you don't have a signal, whether that's cellular or Wi-Fi. However, we've learned some more information about it. If you're over 140 characters and you're connected to a satellite, that is actually the character limit. You'll have to send multiple messages. There's also a new message when you don't have service showing what's available. So if we go to our control center here, press and hold on our connection, then you'll see that we have satellite not available. We'll try a demo though. It opens up and says satellite connection demo. Try connecting to satellite, try emergency SOS. So we have messages, find my roadside assistant, and emergency SOS. So it's a new screen here where you can type messages via satellite. So you'll see it here. Give it just a second. It says trying to get a clear view of the sky, and it's giving a demo of what this looks like. So it says looking for signal. We'll give it just a moment, and it wants me to turn left for a satellite. Now I'm indoors. I don't expect this to work, but this is something that has a couple new options for it. Within a FaceTime call, Apple has updated one of the control center options. So you'll see I'm already on a FaceTime call here. And if we go in and tap the top here, you'll see that we have some new options here for standard, voice isolation, wide spectrum, and we can change through that. And then the overall controls are a little bit different, where it says portrait, we have studio light, and we can change that here in the control center where it's just a little bit of an updated interface. With watchOS 11, Apple updated the Smart Stack to have more intelligence based on what you're doing with live activities and more. One of the new options in Smart Stack will be Shazam. Once it identifies a song, it should show up here. It doesn't appear to be here just yet, but it's coming soon. One other thing I wanted to mention about watchOS 11 is it removes the Siri watch face. There is no option for it now. So if you wanted to add that watch face, you just won't have the option for it. So it looks like it's gone. If we scroll all the way down, there to Simple, goes to Snoopy, and it's just gone in general. So hopefully they bring that back a little bit later. It looks like it's just gone for now. Now, it's been an odd couple of weeks of releases. Apple didn't release any public releases. We did get iOS 18 betas, but we're still waiting for iOS 17.6 betas. We don't know when they're coming out. Apple hasn't said, but we do expect Apple to fix some things with public releases, with iOS 17.5.2, or maybe they'll just push iOS 17.6. But we do expect them to fix things such as screen time, as well as the alarm clock bug. That's a pretty major one that they still haven't addressed. So maybe iOS 17.5.2 in this upcoming week, maybe not, or maybe iOS 17.6 Beta 1 to sort of stagger between that and then the next release of iOS 18 Beta 2, which usually comes out within about 2 weeks. After that point, then we'll get iOS 18 Public Beta 1. So typically Public Beta 1 will then have an iOS 18 Developer Beta re-release, something along those lines, and that's what we'll see released to public beta testers. Of course, the public release will be a few months away, typically in mid-September around the iPhone 16 launch. So lots of different things we're expecting, lots of different changes, but hopefully we see some updates, at least to fix some bugs in iOS 17.5.1. As far as the iOS 18 experience, well, it's kind of shocking how stable iOS 18 has been, and it seems that when it's finished, it will finally be a wonderful experience. At least I'm hopeful that it will be. Things such as banking apps still seem to work. I've tested some and haven't seen any complaints of them not working. I've had none of them stop working on me. This is a great update and seems to be working very, very well. Apple's fixed quite a few things, such as connectivity. My connectivity overall has been much better. I haven't had to reset, turn off cellular, or just go into airplane mode or anything like that. It's just worked. I have had some issues with it dropping Wi-Fi, but in general, it seems to be much, much better, including AirPods. I have seen some complaints with AirPods connecting to them, but I am on the beta, so maybe that's the difference there. But you'll see how quickly it connected to iOS 17.5.1, then iOS 18. It seems to be working just fine, and I haven't had any issues with AirPods whatsoever. They've also fixed the wallpaper dimming bug. That seems to be fixed. They've fixed the standby bug, which is something I thought they would have fixed by now. So what that means is if we go into standby here, give it a second, it'll go into standby. There we go. If I press and hold, I can finally edit this. So you'll see once it unlocks with Face ID, I can go in and edit this, change it around, whatever I want, change the colors. This is something that stopped working on iOS 17.5.1. It would not work once you edit it a single time. So that's great that they've fixed that. They've fixed a lot of other bugs throughout. That doesn't mean it doesn't still have bugs, but they have certainly fixed a lot of bugs. Some of the new bugs that still remain, for example, if we go into the Files app, and you'll see here's my thumbnail for iPadOS 18, everything new. If we go to share this, there's no option to save it to photos. This is something I used all the time, just sort of synced across devices. There's no option to do this. So this is something that's missing that they need to bring back. For accessibility users, it seems that VoiceOver isn't working very reliably, or it just stops or isn't working properly, and screen recognition isn't fully working, and there's mislabeled buttons for things such as flashlight that actually says text size when you try to make changes. So there's a few different things here, and some people say that it's using a lot of storage for caching things. So if we go into general, if we go into this, you'll see I'm using 105 gigabytes. It's loaded, and I'm only using 12.76 gigabytes, but some people complain that it's using a lot. Now it may use a lot up front and then get rid of it, but I haven't had that issue, but some people have. The notification bug is still there where it squares off the icons. That's definitely something that I've seen, and there's a few issues here and there. On my iPad, it's actually crashed multiple times when I tried to customize the home screen. Let me see if I can reproduce that. But when I was setting up the iPadOS video to show what's new, if I went and maybe gathered a couple different things here, just gather a few icons together, went to the next page. If I did this and then just dropped them, it would actually crash and then respring the display. So let's cancel that. I'll grab this, do this again, move these back. There we go. And it seems to be working okay now. But before, it would just crash every time. Now, a reboot typically fixes most of these issues. And if you are having issues, I would recommend rebooting the phone. It's an early beta. And of course, if you are having issues, make sure to report those in the feedback app. So there's still plenty of known bugs. It's an early beta. It's expected, but it's much better than I really thought it would be. If we go into the release notes, these are public facing as well. If we go into this, you'll see that there are a ton of known issues. For example, some people say their notifications aren't showing. Apple actually says they're aware of this, and if it's happening to you, scroll up. They should be there, but there's definitely some bugs in this. So known issues with accessibility. You'll see here as we scroll down, Apple Cache, just about everything has at least some sort of bug, whether that's CarPlay, with UI issues. You'll see here it says Bluetooth pairing UI could become irresponsive for BMW users, which leads to failed contact transfer. Fixing this or the workaround is dismiss the lingering UI pop-up and enable contact transfer in settings and then device info. So still lots of issues, and before you report an issue, make sure it's not listed here, as Apple will be working on all of these as they're already aware. So lots of things to be aware of, but that doesn't mean they won't work on it and then resolve it. They've resolved many of the annoying bugs. Now they're just sort of usability bugs that are in an early beta, so not really much of an issue. As far as performance overall, it seems to be pretty good, but there is the occasional lag, the keyboard lag. ProMotion seems to be fine with scrolling. Even on older devices, it seems to be okay, but there's definitely some lag from time to time. Maybe typing, I saw that, and it does come and go, but just going into the UI, switching between things, changing things, sometimes just causes odd lag here and there. As far as the heat of the device, well, it was pretty severe when I first installed it. I expected that as it's processing a ton in the background, but in general, it stays fairly cool for me unless I'm using the camera. There's definitely some odd issues here and there, and if I turn on the camera, it warms up pretty quickly. That's okay. Again, it's an early beta, but just something to be aware of. Let me show you with the thermal camera though, as I know many of you like to see that. Here's one on 17.5.1 sitting idle. You'll see on iOS 18, it's definitely a little bit warm at about 35 degrees Celsius. On 17.5.1, it's about 5 degrees cooler at 30.5 degrees Celsius. And again, in Fahrenheit, we're at about 95.5 degrees Fahrenheit. And 17.5.1 is at about 88 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's definitely a difference there. Nothing to be concerned about, but it is an early beta. I expect some odd things like that. I did run benchmarks on this, so let's go into Geekbench 6, and they weren't that great. They really haven't improved much for me, but again, it's an early beta doing a lot of background processing. We have 2,886 for single core, 6,643 for multi-core. If we go back and take a look at the history, I did run it a few days ago. It was still a little bit higher than that. It goes up and down quite a bit, and Geekbench 6 may not be optimized for iOS 18 yet. So we could see these numbers jump up, but again, just keep in mind, future betas will fix that. As far as overall battery life, well, this has been surprising depending on who you ask. Some people say it's really, really good. Other people say it's the same. That's kind of my experience as iOS 17.5.1, and some people say it's terrible. So as far as the battery health, we'll go into battery health. I've got 214 cycles. I'm down to 95% capacity. Some people are seeing the capacity be lower than they would expect. This could be a bug, but it's not the beta causing it, but the beta is using more power, cycling the battery more, which in turn will cause the capacity to go down. Until someone invents a better battery, it's just the way it is on every phone, every lithium-ion battery, even those in cars and more. They all degrade like this over time. But you can see that here in Coconut Battery on the left. Now, as far as overall battery life, if we go here, take a look at today. I've had 3 hours and 44 minutes of screen active time, 5 hours and 41 minutes of screen idle time, and I even plugged it in as it was down to about 30%. I'm currently at 55%, and it's getting me mostly through a day. Yesterday, I had 2 hours and 16 minutes of screen active time and used over 75% of my battery. The battery could definitely be improved, and as far as camera improvements, well, here's a few different photos, and one's on 17.5.1, the other on iOS 18 Beta 1, gives you an idea of what it can do. I did notice that when I was taking photos with the iOS 18 version of 15 Pro Max, in portrait mode, it was zoomed further out than with 17.5.1. It looked like I was using the 2x button, so there was a difference there. That could be a bug. If you're wondering if you should install iOS 18 Beta 1, well, typically I would say if you're trying to fix bugs, definitely do not install this. I would wait at least until iOS 18's public beta is out, then you can try it, but I wouldn't recommend it on your main device, especially if you need it for business or work. I would hold off on that until it's a little bit more stable and more refined, usually around Beta 3 or so. Now, as far as what you had to say about the overall experience, let's take a look at some of your comments. Our Olog said, "This is the most stable beta I've ever gotten from Apple. My battery life is way better than 17 somehow, and I have no heat at all. iPhone 15 Pro." Jalon Davison 1164 said, "iOS 18 is great, but bad battery life. I'm on an iPhone SE 2. I'm waiting for iOS 18 Beta 2. Joe Mioro says, "Numerous insignificant bugs, but nothing major that affects daily driver, 15 Pro Max." Gerald 12345 says, "Running iOS 18 on my iPhone 15 Pro Max, and it's pretty stable. Some lag on the lock screen from waking up, battery life a little worse, but that's to be expected. watchOS 11 running on my Ultra, and battery life on that is pretty terrible. Really have to charge daily now. Had one respring from the watch also." TV Remote 9438 said, 18.0 Beta 1 on an iPhone 14. Battery life is good, if not the same as 17.5.1. And it's pretty stable apart from some bugs I've ran into. The worst of them being screen time. The widget is broken when using the tinted icons feature, and now for some reason screen time crashes settings when I try to open screen time. Sanitizer said, "Originally it was running great with good battery life on the first and second day, but I started to run into a lot of issues. Cannot search and find results on the app library, occasional lag, especially when picking up the phone and trying to turn on the screen, overheating and battery drain when doing nothing. I know it's pretty normal on a first beta, but went from 96 to 78% in an hour even though I didn't use it at all. Maybe some background application." Klaus Warzenek said, and hopefully I said that properly, "Surprisingly stable in all areas. Only small bugs where changes were made. Very usable update on both iPhone 15 and iPad Pro M1. So that's everything with iOS 18 Beta 1. It's much better than most previous betas with Beta 1, so I'm pretty happy to see that and hopeful that it will get much better. Let me know if you've found any other features I haven't mentioned in my previous videos or this one. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And of course, I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.